Sorry. Hi. Welcome to Talking Horses, Sarah, Andy. I was looking up in non-important information tangentially related to racing. Saturday here, 10 race car, the Jimmy Winkfield. You ready?
I'm ready.
All right.
Now you are too.
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm sort of ready, but I'm distracted. Anyhow, head over to NYRA Bets. If you're distracted, go to NYRA Bets. Use the promo code MATCH200, and we will match the $200 of your initial deposit. We have a Derby bankroll builder, the Virginia Derby. I know everybody's excited about that. Who wouldn't be? It's a necessary race on the Triple Crown Trail that will produce exactly zero Derby starters. Head on over, bet 50 to win or more, the Virginia Derby, and you get $20 towards your Derby bankroll. Think Getaway Car would even run the Derby? Wouldn't Bob have to lose about 4 horses before he ran the Derby? I suppose he could run, but
Well, I mean,
doesn't seem like it.
he could.
Anyhow, he looked pretty good. I don't think he'll be the 9 to 5 morning line. Cross country Big 5, 3 at Oaklawn, 2 here. We're on all day. We're on from 1 to 6 today. 1 to 2 in FS1, 2 to 2:30 in FS2, 2:30 to 6 in FS1. What could go wrong there? Absolutely everything, I'm sure. Race number 1. I guess the horse to beat is Pam Pam in here, but she doesn't feel like the most reliable of runners, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, look, she's been able to replicate that 71 Beyer speed figure a couple of times when she's been spotted against claiming types or types that seem like the ones that she's going to be facing today. And overall, I think that this has been a productive claim for Linda Rice, and now just taking that logical step to put her where she might be able to be competitive. But
Well, she claimed her for $25,000, so she's not even dropping.
well, she won for 40,000, so it's been a productive claim overall.
Right. Well,
But-
she won conditional claiming races, right? Now she's in a conditional claiming race. It's 35. I don't think it's a drop. I just think she's running where she belongs, right?
well, she's dropping from her last race.
You know, those races are a little bit skeptical. She's facing an easier field, I guess, but
Yeah.
I don't see it as a negative drop in any way. I mean, she
I don't
claimed
either,
for
but-
25. That was the point.
Right, and that's also what I'm trying to say as well, that it's just they've done what they can with her, and it makes sense for them to put her in this spot versus feeling like this is a bad claim and you have to get rid of a horse. It's been a good claim. So I think that she's the horse to beat. She's just not entirely reliable or all too enticing when you have a lot of horses that are getting class relief.
Well, there aren't too many in here particularly appealing. What's the story with Echo and Eternity?
Just one of those ones that's getting some class relief. And overall, I was looking at Bruce Levine's stats coming off of layoffs, and at face value, he doesn't have good numbers with that kind of move. But I looked at Aqueduct dirt sprints off 61 to 180 days. He's actually 6 for 26, 54% of the money with a $3.10 ROI.
Can you switch it and look at 60 to 120 days?
Sure.
Because I'm just sort of curious. I'm just curious because you know, it's funny about layoffs. I don't think this is a layoff. I think it's the 3 months that she hasn't run. I mean, you look at her; she had been running for for a year straight, right? She was off for 7 months, and then she ran for a year straight. It just feels like Bruce just gave her a couple extra races off because her
Okay.
form was declining. You know, I've got her third by default in this race. My problem with her is, I know it just seems like it's been a while. So with her, she's got that one sort of 1.5 figs that are okay. How is he 60 to 120 days? I'm just curious.
60 to 120 dirt sprints here at Aqueduct, 26%, 6 for 23, 52% in the money, $3.51 ROI.
All right.
So still positive.
Well, that's good. You must have a nice price in there somewhere. Okay, I got her third. I didn't know what to do. I went to the 2 bedtime story. We'll take a look at her last win, which was in synthetic at Gulfstream over a year ago. And at the end of the day, she's got a pedigree to handle the dirt. They have a dirt track up at Woodbine. Well, I'm sorry, at Gulfstream. She wasn't at Woodbine. I apologize. I don't love taking away from Jose D'Angelo, but we've seen this Robert Johnston having horses run that make absolutely no sense whatsoever on paper, which includes that $100 horse last week. And
Yeah.
sort of looks like the speed and has enough dirt pedigree. In fact, there's literally more of a dirt pedigree to say, and has faster figs, so sort of a logical horse. I hope he handles the dirt.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean,
just so tired of seeing some of these horses, to be honest with you.
completely fair, and this one is likely the speed of the speed, especially hinting at those works, handling dirt in the morning
Well,
at
it
least.
has to be the speed here. I mean,
Yeah.
assuming she gets out of the gate, she is faster than these horses, and even Archie is a rider that tends to go. Race number 2. Race number 2 is really a question of what you want to do with Kid Billy, and we'll take a look at his last race. And I think the concern with him is he is a horse that has not gotten out of the gate particularly well in his last two starts, and that is a bit of a concern, especially drawing the rail. Having said that, myself, I couldn't make a case. He has it all. I didn't really think this horse was that good, and there seemed to be other speed. On the hill, not a particularly winning type. Has that one win recently, but it was at Finger Lakes. I don't think ran that badly in here. But at the end of the day, yeah, I'm concerned the Kid Billy's not going to break. I don't want to bet him at a short price in here, but I simply don't want to bet anybody else. So I put him on top because I just don't like the rest of this field. And I understand the Morolo story, and I'll let you talk about him, but I can't make any excuse whatsoever for his last race.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And I think that he was in behind horses. He was towards the inside on a day where being inside was advantageous. So he was with the racetrack, and the pace started to come apart, and he was close to it. But you could also make the argument that those two horses that were up front early were not of the same class level and were not expected to really be able to sustain that speed. So even though the winner came from last, it just seemed like that kind of cheap speed in front of him. I like that Manny gets back aboard, and he kept him in the clear and forward last time out, and maybe it was just a function of a couple of other horses being faster than him and just landing in the spot that he was rather than any sort of intention or any mistake made, so I don't want to blame Ruben Silvera by any means, but I know that he's going to be in the clear today towards the outside, and I think that overall there's a little bit less speed in here.
Yeah, I found myself manufacturing an excuse for his last race by saying he didn't like being inside. I don't see any evidence that that's been a situation for him in the past. So I think that's like, to me, that is the excuse, but to me, it's not an excuse because it doesn't make any sense to me. He was awful last time. Now, maybe third off the layoff, he'll run better. And in reality, his race two back wasn't that bad. Now, it was a four-horse field, and Courageous Lala was the horse who was third in there. So while the winner's okay, the rest of them really weren't that good. I tried hard to make Morolo, but as far as I'm concerned, he's not the horse that he once was. Now, maybe he'll refine it today, and drawing outside might help him. But I wished I could have made a case for him. I just couldn't. And I don't love Kid Billy either. But I just couldn't find a horse that I was willing to put my money on against him.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I understand Warolo. I just haven't seen it, particularly in his last start.
Yeah.
Or I bet him. Maybe I'm just mad because I bet him last time and he stunk, but he did stink.
He did.
Race number 3. We'll see what Heavenly Light does. Heavenly Light lost last time at a short price, and it was a muddy sealed track. We'll take a look at the race. I guess he's the horse to beat. It's another race that I wish I could have found something compelling in here, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, look, this horse has been a short price over the last 2 starts and even 3 starts ago when she did win and just hasn't gotten the money. But I thought that overall the winner did get started ahead of her a little bit. It was a muddy sealed surface last time, though it doesn't seem like she didn't handle it. Her last 2 races are the same 60 by her speed figure, and that's just slightly faster than the rest of this field. If Helen's Revenge doesn't find her maiden win, which was sprinting and for a tag as well. So overall, I took her in here. Do I think that she's a horse that I trust a lot at a very short price? No, but I just could not make that case that somebody else was going to turn the tables on her
I hear
today.
you. I don't like the fact that she has not won off the claim for Brad Cox at 2 short prices, but you're right. Both of those races are faster than the other races that horses are running in here, and maybe she just got herself in a race that she sort of can't lose. You know, you think you want to make a case for Pocket Queens, but that was a pretty bad field that she beat last time with a pretty good trip in doing it. So I don't know why I'm supposed to be in love with her. I guess the figure 2 back gives her a little bit of a chance, but I just have no good feeling that she's much. I thought with Higher Force, she gets back to a dry track. Her race 2 back is close enough to give her a chance. And I don't know exactly what happened, but how she ended up that far back is something only really Eric could answer to me. It says Antsy the Gate. I don't know what that means because she seemed to break fine in the race, maybe a step slow, but she just ended up so far back. She had absolutely no chance whatsoever, and I'm hoping with Gomez that blinkers off. Maybe she'll be a bit closer to the pace today.
Yeah,
But I still don't have much confidence that she's necessarily good enough. She was just the alternative I could make because I didn't really like Helen's Revenge, who just, I don't know, unless she didn't like the mud last time.
She faded sooner. I couldn't make her at what was not going to be enough of a price to take her over a horse that's defeated her a couple of times. And I looked at Higher Force. I thought this horse was interesting, and then overall was making the same argument you did.
Not sure how interesting she is.
Well, relative to the rest of this group, she seemed a little bit interesting with a couple of changes being made. And I agree that she does not have to be as far back by any means as she was last time, but I still couldn't get to her over Heavenly Light.
I don't have any problem with that. I'm not, believe me, I feel like I don't think I'm forcing a square peg into a round hole, but I'm just trying to make a case for somebody to play against Heavenly Light, who you're right, is the horse to beat in here, and I didn't want a short price. The Jimmy Winkfield, the fourth, I thought this came up a fairly interesting race, and we'll start with the T-Craft I Can race, and you've got T-Craft second and I Can third. I'm not a T-Craft fan. Why don't you talk about it?
He does have that concern of coming off Lasix, whereas his last two races have been better than his sort of inconsistencies that we saw as a 2-year-old. He had that one big race when finishing second to Chancellor McPatrick, but the rest of his races just weren't anywhere near as good as that one. And now, as that newly turned 3-year-old with Lasix added, he's won twice in a row, and even with a trip, 2 starts back. But is he going to be a horse that is able to adjust? And was it the Lasix that moved him forward, or was it just a horse that's maturing and figuring things out? And at 2-1 with a case I thought that could be made for pretty much everybody, a little tough to get to Arcadian for me, I didn't want to take him on top and thought that while he can win, he had a couple of things going against him to just at least try to get somebody else there.
Yeah, I didn't like him really at all in this race. I think if you want somebody out of that race, you want I Can. Even though he finished ahead of him, I thought I Can did much more work in that race. Now he's drawn towards the outside, and I just feel like overall T-Craft has had 2 really good trips in a row. And if he's going to be 2-1 after being 3-2 last time, to the 4-5 on I Can, and I Can's going to be a bigger price. For my money, I think I Can is the better bet. Now, I'm not in love with I Can either, who I don't know really how good he is, but my basic focus was that I wasn't really a big fan of T-Craft. Now, you've got 2 horses coming up from Maryland. One of them, Saxton, I think you have to respect off the claim for Brittany Russell, who's got terrific numbers off the claim, particularly with sprinters, where she's really, really good. I think he's dangerous. And I know this horse has actually finished ahead of Do It for Michael last time, but something I think went wrong with Do It for Michael last time, or else why would he be gone for the 4 months that he's been gone now? And if you go back 2 races to Maryland Nursery, the reality is, from a speed figure standpoint, he ran a figure that's fast enough to win, and this was back in October. So if you believe in the fig, and he had run a 72, so he had every right to be improving off of his 2 prior races, and now he's got 5 months to improve, you have a horse that could run a number in the 80s and figures to be stalking the speed of Paul as a Star. You like her a lot more than I do, and listen, she could certainly win here, but I just thought this horse would be in a good forward position, and if he is as good as that race suggests, on his good race, he can build on that, and he's better than these. So I went to him. I prefer him over Saxton. I think they're both live in this race. You like Paul as a Star, though, and we'll look at her race, winning her maiden last time.
Yeah, and I mean, Philly facing the boys, but she did that as a 2-year-old, and she was one that was still able to finish third. She was off for a long time after that, but she came back with a number that fits very well with the rest of this group in running the Beyer speed figure she did last time, a 77. And while she was coming off of that long break, she was forwardly placed, and I don't really see the plan being different today to try different tactics with her other than to have her have some forward position. And I just thought that with the way that she fits with this race in terms of her last number and the potential to build on that, at enough of a price, I wanted to take her in here.
Yeah, I didn't particularly get her. I'm always a little bit skeptical of outlier figures in 6.5 furlong races. Number one, I also thought that speed was an advantage that day on February 8th, and she was with it. We'll see. I mean, she does project to be the inside speed. We'll see what she does in here. Interesting running of the Jimmy Winkfield, race number 5. And these are 3-year-old maidens, going 6 furlongs. And we'll take a look at the replay of the horse that you've picked. I don't like her. You like Elamaya. Talk about her.
She just comes out of a productive race. We haven't seen her in quite some time. This was her first start, of course, and she hasn't run since then. But she got bet a little bit on this day, going off as, I believe, the second choice in here. 63 Beyer speed figure with progressive improvement figures, too. A run a bit better than that. Pedigree's not much, but the horse she finished second to in here went on to win an off-the-turf Bolton Landing next out, an 84 Beyer versus the 72 that she had winning this race on the 14th. Ease next out on the Pocahontas, so maybe something went wrong. La Cara was 4th in that race, returned to win that Pocahontas, and then recently won the Suncoast, running 2nd in the Devona Dale. We've seen another come out of there and improve. So it just seems like those are 2-year-olds that went on to do something okay enough that if she does the same, she could be okay.
I obviously, all that's true, and I agree, and I saw it all as well. The problem for me is none of that. The problem for me is that Melody Giddings horses in Saratoga were running through brick walls, and none of them have run back to those races. None
That's
of them.
fair.
You know, she had that maiden in the last race in the turf that they bet
Was it
against the Klarovich horse that had run a
Humstinger?
huge race first time out. I mean, the horse ran second, but looked like a wildebeest out there, and then has stunk since then. And I'm
Yeah.
really wondering
Maybe
a
the
little
barn was
bit.
just
It
hot.
just seems like the Barnes horses were running incredibly well, and I agree with everything you said. And routine improvement, et cetera, et cetera. You're 100% right in everything you said. I can't argue with any of it, except I have not seen this Barnes horses perform anywhere near the level that they performed in Saratoga, and that's, to me, a major concern.
No,
and
that's
that's
fair.
why I'm against this horse. I totally agree with everything you said. I mean, it's not what you said were factual. I mean, you
Well,
gave out
yeah.
facts about her, and you're absolutely right about every one of them.
But I think that that's a fair concern.
I don't want to take a favorite from a barn that is not reproducing. And it wasn't just one horse, you know, it was a
Right.
number of
You've
horses.
seen it a couple of
and they're
times.
just not running back. Now, if this horse, if that you have taken at face value and she improves off that, she should be 4 to 5 in this race because none of them really ran very well. I mean, I'm very sweet. I saw these people picking her. I have no idea what the appeal
she
of
do
her
any
is.
running,
No,
really,
she was
last time?
awful in that race. She's complicated. I mean, she's just kind of run along.
Yep.
Maybe, you know, she'll take a lot of money if your horse wins the stake with her second to her, but I haven't seen her doing running. She had a good rail on December 27. That take it up early was sort of minor in there, and she just
sort of
sucked along
stayed
on
in
the rail.
place last
yeah.
time.
I mean, she could win.
Sure.
Listen, I don't know if my horse is any good, but at least in her case, I don't know. I just thought you looked at that, and maybe it's just a race that could be a little bit better than it looks. And coming back, she hasn't run in a long time. The barn's been so hot, and she won't be a
She has
short
pedigree.
price. Yeah, so I have to be these Saints for whatever that's worth.
Le
mean,
Bon Temps.
to me, yeah, well, to me, the interesting horse is Twirling Beauty. I know Ray Handel's barn has been just absolutely ice cold, and you know he can't win a race. He hasn't even been running that many
He
lately.
did win at Fairgrounds recently.
Well, that's not helping here.
No.
And this horse, you know, worked a very impressive 10 flat, I thought, at the sales. I liked the horse's work. I meant to show it, and I forgot to. I think this is the interesting horse in here. I almost picked her on top. I just hate picking first-time starters on top. But I was going to use 3 and 5.
If the barn was going a little bit better right now,
I agree.
I would have put this horse much, much higher.
Yeah, I feel like first-time starters sometimes live in a different universe, but I agree. This barn has been, I mean, it's a matter of fact. I mean, it's just, what has he won? 7 races in New York and Saratoga after having a fabulous meet up there, and he's 0 for this meet.
Past 3 months.
It is a concern.
2 for 43. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a concern, no doubt about it. We'll take a break. We'll be back with the late pick 5.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With NYRA Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with NYRA Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NYRABets.com.
Oh, welcome back to Talking Horses. Sarah Albadwi and Andy Serling. Race number 6. Well, we'll take a look at Floki's fight. Yeah, he's been voided claim twice, and he's in for 25 today. So is it because Lyndon knows the horse is going to get voided if it runs, so she's not worried about losing him? Or what? I'm not betting against him, but I don't trust him, but he lays over this field.
I understand if somebody's looking at that and has some concerns, but I couldn't make a case that he gets beat today by somebody else based on what's in the PPs. He's just run against much faster horses. His last couple of races are consistently faster than what we've seen from some of these, where they might have a race that could compete recently or in the past, but not adding them back to back and having them show any level of consistency. I don't think he's going to be too far away early by any means. He can be in front if they really want to be. I couldn't make the case for somebody else.
Has he been out for 3 months? Because if you get voided twice, you have to be out for a certain period of time. I don't know all the HISA rules. If he gets voided today, do we throw him off the grounds and he's not allowed to race anymore? Because it does seem a little bit... If he wins this race and gets voided, because he's certainly going to be claimed, It's a very strange circumstance because it's almost like you're putting him at risk, but you're not really putting him at risk. And he towers over the field. It's a little weird off those 2 voided claims. So I'm interested to see what happens with him. We'll look at Flat Out Flying, I guess, based on his last figure. He's clearly the other horse in the race. I just have trouble believing that 86 is really indicative of who he is, you know? And I mean, the difference between the quality of fields he's been running against and Floki's flight's been running against, it's like grade 1s versus moderate allowances.
Right, and this is that situation where you have this fig, an outlier from what we've seen from him in a very long time.
Another voided claim, by the way.
Another voided claim as well, as you mentioned, and the level of competition just not anywhere near what we've seen Floki's flight be facing recently. So I think that, yes, if you're looking for somebody else and you think that Floki's flight isn't going to show up today and that Flat Out Flying is going to run his last race, sure, but those were a lot of ifs as taking the second choice.
Yeah, I understand why the voided claim rule came in, and like a lot of things, it was well-intentioned. It's not working as it is. So, as usual in racing, we make a rule, and nobody sits around and reevaluates it. It's time to reevaluate the voided claim, because I feel as though there are a lot of people that claim horses that would probably keep them, despite the void, if they were given a choice. And originally, I believe there was a choice. It's not working. In fact, it's a negative. And to be honest with you, from a handicapping angle, it's a massive distraction.
It is.
Because it basically seems to mean nothing. But isn't it supposed to mean something?
Well, that's the problem, because we don't know what it's about.
Well, because, yes, we don't give the information out to the public, which is also an atrocity.
And if we knew what it was about, then maybe it becomes a little bit more
I don't know.
Something that you could use. But also at the same time, just because we know what it's about doesn't mean that
because they keep coming back and winning.
It's going to happen next time.
They keep coming back and winning, and it doesn't seem to regard, and frankly, while, once again, well-intentioned, I don't understand why it hasn't been reviewed, because it ain't working. So, whatever, not up to me. But as a handicapper and a horse player and somebody who I'd like to think in some ways represents horse players, I've played the horses for a long, long time. I've played them full-time at different times. If I was not sitting at NYRA, if I was just a player coming, I would be complaining vociferously about this because it just ain't working.
No,
and if
not.
anything, it's proving deceptive for horse players. So if it's not helping, and it doesn't seem to be helping at all, it seems like horses are being put in races where they're taking a shot because they feel like it's more than a coin flip, they're going to get voided. And it's like, well, I'm going to win this race, and if I get claimed, so be it. But if I don't, I got an easy purse. It's a weird situation.
And nobody needs yet another variable that may mean absolutely nothing at all, but may have some significance, and then you're left factoring that in as well as
if you don't know what it
things.
means, if you don't know where it's coming from, listen, it's not the same thing, but the new gelding thing is not completely accurate information and therefore shouldn't be given. Race number 7, a big scratch in race number 7 with Al's Ruby coming out. Talk about Brown Sugar Babe.
I just think she's had a couple of excuses over her last few starts, and the wet track last time, she's 0 for 5 on a wet track without hitting the board. 2 back, I thought that stumble was significant, and it was actually a few strides out of the gate as she broke inwards towards your eventual second place finisher next on stage, and it seemed like she had a little contact with that one. Ruben Silvera popped up out of the saddle, had to regain the irons in there. 3 back, I think the 2-turn mile and an eighth is just a touch further than her ideal, though she can handle it. The pace was contested. She took back to sit behind. I think that the other 2 that finished ahead of her got started before she did, and Just Music saved a little more ground.
She had a pretty good trip that day.
It was okay.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with her, and I completely agree with everything you said, it's obviously all sort of logical. The problem is now she's going to be favored.
Yeah.
And she was a lot more interesting if you wanted to bet her against Al's Ruby. And I'm with you on all this stuff. I mean, I think it all makes perfect sense. The problem is she was the kind of horse you didn't mind betting at like 4-1 with Al's Ruby probably going to be around even money because she had the look of a horse they just were going to be drooling over for no good reason.
Yep.
And now, and she's not supposed to even been a really longer price than Al's Ruby, especially if what you're saying is right. And I think it makes it very logical.
Yes.
Now the problem is she's going to be 8-5 or 2-1, and she becomes less appealing. That's my biggest problem with her. No problem at all with her logically.
I think that Call Her Bluff will take some of
Right.
the money,
She-
but
you're
at
gonna
the
be
same
8 to 5
time,
and 2 to
she's
1.
going to be the favorite.
Yeah, I mean, Elliptic's going to take some money as well. I wish Amelia Green luck with this horse, but I ain't running a bet horse Claim from Morey, though. I was looking at the numbers. Claim from Bill Morey, 14 for 133, 11% and $1.25 ROI. He's too sharp a guy for me to want to claim from.
And it doesn't really matter to me where they're going.
Listen, I won't be shocked if that horse runs, but I don't love the switch. I'm going to go with Racing Colors, who gets a rider changed, Jose Gomez in here. And in reality, this is a horse who, if she's able to run back to a race 3 back, she can win this race. Now, she didn't run particularly well 2 back, and she didn't run particularly well last time out. But she has run figures that are fast enough to win, and yeah, I got no problem with it, too. I don't have a big problem with Call Her Bluff. I suppose she can win as well. I think Harlan's Bond is a little bit interesting for claim for Gustavo Rodriguez, who's suddenly winning races again after kind of a long drought. I see he claimed a horse for Flying P, I think, on Sunday. I'm just going to take a shot with a horse that if she decides to do her running today and gets a rider switch is good enough to beat these horses. And at least I know she's going to be a big price.
And I've always liked this horse, so I have no problems with you thinking that
she's held her
she's
form a long time.
She's such an overachiever. I mean, really has been put in a lot of spots where she had no business running as well as she did. So I think that you can always expect her to generally show up and run better than anticipated. For sure.
I'm going to give her a little bit of a whack. I got a thing for this horse. I think she's kind of a cool horse. Race number 8. Race number 8 is the first of 2 straight races for Linda Rice where it's surprising she left them both in. And I like the horse that's the other part of the entry. I like the 1A in here, not the 1. And I can't take this entry on top because, Six Kings can win. But I think Accidental Bid is the one you want. But we'll take a look at Six Kings last race, which is the one they're going to be betting her on. And I think she's the one that's probably a shorter price. But go ahead.
I just thought that this horse was a little bit wide against a rail that was advantageous. And while it wasn't super extreme that day, I just thought that he was a little bit against it overall. And while he is a horse that stumbled a little bit 3 starts ago, he was also off slow 2 starts ago. So I think that he's had a little bit of trouble and was against the track until the very late stages last time. And with Accidental Bid in here, that's the speed part of this entry. But I understand if you like Accidental Bid, you can't bet this horse because it's Six Kings that's going to take the bulk of the play.
Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about the rail on February 28th, but I know that I don't think the rail was good on February 15th, and I think that Accidental Bid spent the majority of the race down in the inside in there and not really in the 2 path, and still ran well and probably is better than it looks. Now he's a bit faint-hearted. He's got to get a mile, but I'd rather take a chance with him to wire this field than the one at a shorter price. And I don't think Accidental Bid would be a huge price in here, but he'd be a bigger price. So
Sure.
I can't bet them, and I don't really think there are too many other options in here. So I went to Endowed off the trainer change to Rob Atras. It's as simple as that. It's a horse who has back figures that are faster than these horses, and I'm hoping off the trainer change to Rob Atras the horse can do better. That's all. Just get back to good racing. Now, Rob does not have great numbers on trainer switches. Not at all. He's 17 for 99 overall, a $1.13 ROI. In routes, he's 6 for 34, the $1.46 ROI. So he doesn't have a big numbers moving horses up. Having said that, this horse has races that are fast enough to win the race, and I ain't taking the entry at even money or less.
Well, he's the other horse, so I don't
Well,
blame
DD
you.
Sky's not impossible.
No, but he's the horse who maybe has some of an interesting look, making some changes in the spot like this and coming off from some time away, versus a horse that we're getting to know who he is.
Yeah, no, I'm not in love with Endowed, but I just wanted somebody besides the entry because they'll be too short. Now, the entry in the next race is problematic, and I scratched into them with the 4 coming out, and I just left it because, frankly, I didn't really want anybody else. Now, we'll look at Savas Melania, we're talking about race 9 now. We'll look at Savas Melania, who ran a huge figure last time. She runs this again, she's going to win, and maybe she's the next horse like that ridiculous horse that was eased 7 times in a row and now is running 90 figures and looks like she's going to win the Honorable Miss, the horse who won yesterday for Linda, who was 2-5. And I don't know anyone that liked that horse. And she was 2-5 and won like a 1-9 shot. I don't know. Where'd it come from? Is she going to run it again? But once again, I like Malou. I think Malou is the interesting one and the more reliable one of the 2, and she'd be a bigger price. I just didn't scratch out of it because, frankly, I didn't want anybody else.
Yeah, and Malou was against the track last time. The rail was good that day. She was favored, and she was wide the whole race around. So it makes some sense that she's going to get back to some of her better races, and even the number did not come back anything that's very far off what she's been running lately as well. And she still finished 4th in there. So I think that she's the one, I agree, that I would want. And while, yes, Savas Melania has that big race last time, and she's going to be forward in here, I don't really trust her.
Well, she's also going to have to deal with the 5. Now, she rated last time, but Take the Money Honey is supposed to be forward in this race. Imagine she'll go. We both picked against Grammy Girl in here. She's in really good form. I'm a little skeptical of those numbers being predictive going forward. Thought she was very much with the flow of the track this day. I get it, and you know how much I respect Horacio De Paz, but I'm not sure she's not a little bit dressed up.
I think that's totally fair, and I'm with you on where I stand with her. I was against her when she finished second 2 back. I was against last time when she won, and she got bet to favoritism in there, and her last 3 numbers, if she can repeat them, she's going to do well in here unless Save Us Melania runs that last race, and maybe I'll just keep looking stupid with her, but this is a step up.
I don't think that was an 87, personally.
These horses are tougher, too.
I think they are, too. Talk about Catherine Wheel, who I picked second, but I'm beginning to think she may never be any good.
Yeah, and that's the concern for sure, because she's been a short price. She's had a couple of chances. She's had some trouble staying on the racetrack, but I sort of still hold out that hope that she's faced some good stakes quality horses. That 2-year-old race, she was able to at least run a number that was somewhat indicative that she could run back to it a couple of times. And she was coming off that layoff last time at Tampa. She finished second at a huge price, or as the heavy favorite in there. And just I thought today she wasn't going to be favored for once in a very long time.
I get it. She's also going out for a barn that does nothing but win and can't get out of its own way right now. And that's a problematic situation. And I don't think you're going to get the huge underlay with her that you've gotten in the past, as you say. But she's kind of a proven loser and losing when the barn kept winning.
Yep.
And she probably could have won her second start. She didn't get the best of rides that day. But on the other hand, I don't know. I'm kind of running out of gas with her. I put her second, too. I saw the same things as you. But today better be put up or shut up day for her.
Right.
And we'll find out. Race number 10. This entry is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen. I'm only glad that at least the one they scratched was not the one that forced the 3 horses to be entered together. At least the 1 and 1A would have been part of an entry if they were both entered. Entries need to go. Voided claims need to be changed. Entries need to go. These are all things that are good for horse players, and that's really what the Gaming Commission should be doing. They should be looking at things that matter for horse players, and entries are terrible for horse players. We'll take a look. I don't know. I think Glint would be interesting, claimed by Linda, but I'm not going to take her as part of an entry because I don't like Melt With You, and you like Melt With You more than Glint.
Yeah, and I think that the one that some people were interested in was actually Whiskey and Soda, who I didn't really like at all. So I think that Melt With You has some things to prove after a couple of subpar starts, but Benj is just in great form. He's going to a barn that significantly is capable of improving horses. And if you're already starting with a base product that has been in good form consistently over his past 4 races, really, and winning, if he takes another step forward, there's nothing to suggest that he couldn't compete at this class level based on those last several races if he then steps up for a barn that can step horses up.
No argument for me.
Yeah.
Getting in the way of Bill Morey horses off the claim seems like a foolish thing to do, and I completely agree with you. He's certainly very dangerous. I don't really like this horse, Eric, from Miami. We'll take a look at him for Rick. Rick Dutcher does not have great numbers off of wins, believe it or not, or as good a trainer as he is. And I just feel like this is one of those aberrant figs running down Cam Duke on a wet track that it just has no basis in the rest of his career. And why suddenly are we supposed to believe? It's not like he was the first start for Rick. It was a wet, sealed track, and I wonder if he's just totally dressed up off that race. And of all the horses taking money, I don't particularly want him.
It's a fair question. I mean, that race definitely lives in isolation from anything we've seen from him in a very long time. I thought that he had a little bit of trouble in that race, the first one off the claim for Rick Dutrow, but overall,
it still wasn't, even if you, and I don't disagree, but so what?
It's still not
wasn't going to be
in
an
the
80.
realm of
Right.
78. So that's also fair. And at the sloppy sealed track last time to improve as much as he did. Maybe it was a function of the racetrack. Maybe it's a number that's a little bit not indicative of what we're going to see here, but it seems like the barn is starting to pick up some real steam yet again. He's been winning with a lot of his horses lately, and he had that trend where he was doing so well and pretty much everything running was improving and winning, or at least hitting the board. And I had it earlier that I looked it up, but his stats over the last couple of weeks, they show that he's sort of on that trend again.
Well, I mean, I think of the horse that came back yesterday. He didn't do any running. Professor Z, he was at the horse coming off a win. I won't be shocked if he wins. He's just not for me. I like Holton here. I think Holton is quietly sort of taking a drop down, was outside last time. The rail was good, and while Scat-to-Tap was taking advantage, he was chasing outside of him. And he's not really a horse that's really his running style, being forced into a chasing mode. I think you look at his race, he ran 2 back, it's good enough to win. The race he was claimed out is good enough to win in here. He caught a sloppy track, sealed track 3 races back, and I think he's a little bit dirtied up. I don't know that he's going to be 6-1 in here, but to me, he's the one who has enough good races sort of sprinkled through his PPs and has some excuses in the other races that he looked good enough to me, because I don't disagree that Benj can win. I am skeptical that he'll be 5-1 off the Bill Morey claim and a couple of blowout wins. I don't think he'll be that big a price near. Maybe I'm wrong. I guess it all depends on how much they bet the entry in here, and I think some of it also depends on, you know, what was David's feeling with these horses? Who were the ones they were going to bet? Mm-hmm. And maybe Glint is the one that would take the least money in that thing, and he's the one that I wanted in the entry. But with Melt with you, isn't he just going to get bet for a barn that's just not winning? I mean, I know that Wayne Potts had a lot of horses finish second and third. Whether he's been snake bit or not, he's not winning.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I didn't like either of them enough to be within the top 2 for me. So at the short price that they're going to be, I couldn't put them on top, but I like one of them a little bit more than you do. I think that they both have an opportunity in here, but they're just not a bettable entry given how short they're likely to be with some other horses that could absolutely win.
Yeah, I mean, I would be happy to bet Glint in this race on his own. I believe his prior figures are close enough to being competitive. Claim from Bobby Rabat over the last 5 years in the dirt, 3 out of 6 have won with a ROI close to $8. It seems to me like Glint's a horse that Lynn is going to do well with, but because of the entry situation, he's impossible for me to play, because especially as the longer priced one, similarly to Malou, who I gave up with. Sarah, thanks. We're done. You are just getting started, as is Chris Griffin. Head up to NYRA Bets. If you're not a member, use the promo code MATCH200, and we'll match the $200 of your initial deposit. We have a bankroll builder of Virginia Derby, which is run a little after 5 o'clock today. My buddy Travis Stone is in Colonial Downs the weekend calling the races, so it's good to see Travis getting a little work in the winter. You know, he gets a little bit away from the game. He's too good an announcer to be away from the game for 5 minutes, much less almost the entire winter. We have a bankroll with we have cross country pick 5, 3 at Oakland, 2 at Aqueduct. All those races will be available on America's Day at the Races. We're on from 1 to 6. 2 to 2:30 will be in FS2. The rest on FS1. Sarah and I are heading up there now. Chris Griffin's just getting started. Have a great day.
Horse racing? Check. Weekly promotions? Got 'em. Huge payouts? You bet. With NYRA Bets. Download the app today and bet on any track, anywhere, anytime with live HD horse races, betting tips and tutorials, expert picks, and more. You bet with NYRA Bets. Join now for a new member bonus at NYRABets.com.